Back to you, Mayor Odekirk. We know that there have been incidences of police brutality in the Joliet community. How will officers be held accountable for not following proper protocol and procedures?
Well, I certainly think with our new Chief Bill Evans, that's happened. That was not the case in the past. I think everyone here knows. I don't want to touch a raw nerve. There was a man who died in police custody. We were kept out of the loop for about 5 months. About 5 months into this, I started hearing rumors about a videotape that surfaced that showed improper police behavior involving this man's death. I went to our corporation counsel, who was not familiar with the video. I went to the city manager, who was not familiar with the video. Eventually, we got a copy of the video, showed it, I saw it, I showed it to the entire city council, and ultimately, 4 of us on the council, myself, Councilwoman Quillman, Councilman Morris, and Councilman Hugg, did not believe that the administration of the police department was handling the matter properly. We did not believe they were being honest with City Hall, with the legal department, or with us, the elected officials. And we reached out to the Attorney General's office, and specifically to Kwame Raoul. I can tell you that in the meetings that I've had with Mr. Raoul, he's complimented me for the changes that we've made in the Joliet Police Department. The quote was that it's a credit to Joliet. You made these changes on your own. Nobody from the outside had to tell you what to do. So we are and will continue to hold people accountable and move the department forward. Having said that, on a little bit lighter note, we did receive word last week, Joliet, for cities with 100,000 people or more, Joliet has been ranked the 8th safest city in the United States. It's a great accomplishment by our police department, and I really want to credit Chief Evans and the working men and women of the Joliet Police Department for making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bell.
Can you repeat the question?
Certainly. We've had a number of incidences of brutality in the Joliet community. How will officers be held accountable for not following proper protocol and procedures?
So there was a citizens review board that a few of us, I'm sorry, I'm just a little taken aback by some of the comments that were shared. There was a citizens review board, and there was a group led by the Will County Progressives, and one of the things that happened towards the end when I got involved was that we were highlighting how much of the work had been done by other grassroots organizations when it came to police brutality and police reform. And the city of Joliet, they don't want to do anything about it. It was sent back, I think, several times. During that time, there were several police chiefs that, for whatever reason, had their eyes on it, and they all were not for it as well. So I think when you talk about accountability with a police force, the citizen safety is important. I mean, of course, that's what we believe, but we know that our children are watching us. We know that Facebook, social media, and media is a large influence of what we see and how we feel, and it's a reflection of what happens in our cities. And sometimes complicit bias. We sit back, we say that we have a great city council, but a lot of people on that city council reflect a government where police and police influence are heavily involved. A lot of our city council members have been police officers. So rightly so, any type of challenge, any questioning, anything that comes against the status quo is going to be questionable. But when you have people that pass in police custody and their families are not notified timely, and as time goes on, more things start to come about, those aren't things that we can discuss in a public room, because those are things that have to be handled by the court system. And so again, we're talking about empowering people to trust the level of government that is supposed to protect them. And that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. Mr. Darcy.
We know the first call of duty for our police department is to serve and protect. And that is a tough job. I know that they do the best they can do, and I applaud the city that we now have cameras on all of our police officers. They now can see in retrospect what happens in some of the situations they get in. But I think that really there needs to be a lot more training for our police officers. I think we need to be very diligent right now, because they too are set into some heavy emotional issues that they might need help with. So I know that the fire department has partnered up with a group called ThriveWorks that helps first responders when they come on a situation where it's a mental health issue. And I think we also need to really heavily train our police department, like I said earlier, to understand the cultural or mental health issues that they might be up against when they come upon a situation. I think we have a real dedicated police force. I think we have great men and women that are serving our city. I think we as a city need to be very, very diligent to make sure that their minds are right and that they're ready to go, and that every time they make a stop, that they're sensitive to what the situation is. I sit on the Silver Cross Hospital Board, and one thing I learned was that in the emergency room there, and I don't know the statistics at St. Joe's, 30% of the people coming in to the emergency room are mental health or behavioral disorders. So can you imagine, as a fireman or policeman coming into a situation, you know, if there's a guy out burning many American flags in the middle of Larkin Avenue, he's not mad at the United States of America. How do we handle that? We need to train our officers. We need to have someone there to help in that situation to diffuse it. I know there's a group called Battle Buddies that goes out, and when there is a situation with a PTSD veteran, they help diffuse that situation. I know that. I've heard the stories, and it makes a huge difference. So the best thing we can do is keep our professional police officers mentally and physically fit to go out and serve this community. That would be the first thing I'd want to do. That's what I do with the folks that work with me. I serve them so that they can serve better our people. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, what about senior living? How can we help seniors with fixing up their older homes in Joliet? We'll start with you, Ms. Bell.
I think some of the situations that our seniors find themselves in oftentimes deal with financial stress and sometimes their health or their access to health care. So I'd like to see some support surrounding how we are accessing their needs. I know that we have a lot of senior service centers on the west side of town. On the east side of town, we have the high-rise down by Ottawa Street, and then we also have I literally am looking at the building and can't say the name of it. But I know there's a senior development coming with Housing Authority as well. So I think the way that we address their needs, again, is financial situations. Joliet Township is doing a great job right now at providing resources, you know, and making sure that they have access to the things that they need, the help that they need. Again, a lot of things that I've seen recently, even with my father, he recently had back surgery, is that everything has moved to a state level where we are filling out applications online, and we expect these seniors to have access to a lot of things that they can't do because of the technology, right? They're limited because of the things that they have access to in their homes even. So I think when it comes to assisting them for senior living services, we have to look at leveraging and reallocating the funding. I know that there, again, was talk about some of the funding that came to Will County. So I think that the city can work with Will County to assure that we're looking at those funds. Joliet received a large amount of funds for COVID, and so there's some funding that maybe we can look at to assist the seniors in their living situation currently.
Thank you. Mr. Darcy?
I know that this community is a very giving community. I know that Center for Community Concerns gets several $1 million a year in both private and public money. And I know folks that they've helped. They put roofs on houses and fixed porches and sidewalks that were broken and things like that have been done. But, you know, I talked earlier about making sure that we go neighborhood by neighborhood to be sure that everybody gets equitably treated and that we are concerned for that. And Some of the things I'm hearing is that a lot of people have lost hope. You know, they've lived in a house for 70 years and their water bill's high and their tax bill's higher. How do we help those folks? You know, we've got 5 district council members and we've got 3 at-large council members. We need to keep our eye on the ball and make sure that we go street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood, house by house. Then when we see a need, we figure out a way to fix that and help that. So I think that, again, we're a city with a big heart. We need to continue to pay attention to everything and help everyone as best we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, a couple things. We do work with Joliet Housing Authority, who of course does senior housing all over Joliet and Will County. The city works hand in hand with them. I appoint the board members to the Housing Authority. That comes from the mayor's office. So that's one of the roles the city has with senior housing. We also get what's called the Community Development Block Grant. It's federal money. It's a CDBG fund. Myself and the city council vote on how to distribute that money. That's federal funding that comes in every year to Joliet to be distributed for social and human services throughout the city. We've done a number of that recently. There was reference to the COVID money. Ms. Bell's correct. We did receive COVID money, and we distributed it all throughout the community to all various different organizations, including the Senior Services, which is located on Center Street. Specifically, a program that I began as mayor was working with Senior Services to provide free snow shoveling for seniors and people with disabilities. It's been a great success. The demand, unfortunately, outweighs the number of people that we could sign up for the program. But we work with the township and we work with the county, and in this case, Senior Services, to do those things. So I think as far as our role with senior housing, that's what the city's role is. I just, again, would remind everyone what we're responsible for in Joliet. We are responsible for police, for fire, for streets, and for water. Those are the services that you all pay for. Those are the services that we provide. And there's always debate when we get into other areas about money being spent for the Rialto or for other things. And again, some of the money that we're diverting for the senior snow shoveling, I think is certainly a equitable program. It's a good use of our money. But that's the role of the city. That will continue to be the role of the city moving forward. And I think Senior Services does a great job. I think Will County government does a great job with this. And I think the city has been great partners with both of those organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. These next 2 questions are kind of tied together. We have the Joliet Raceway, which has been idle and it's become more of a truck parking lot. So that seems to be an opportunity for redevelopment, for the property to be repurposed. So what do you intend to do, tied to that, to bring big businesses into the Joliet area and to increase higher wages? We'll start with you.
Well, with regard to the racetrack, I know for a fact that they've got truck parking out there, but all those truck parking people have a 90-day out clause. The track will call them and say, you got to be gone. They have not said they're never going to race in Joliet again. They've got a new TV contract coming up, so right now they're going to run in the city of Chicago, which I don't know if it's going to work that well, but I wouldn't count the racetrack out as something that isn't viable in our future.
And what do you plan to do to bring in big business with higher wages?
Well, you know, we have brought in a lot of big business. I'm not sure we brought in a lot of higher wages. I know that we brought in Line Electric. Line Electric is using temp help. Many of these big businesses are using temp help. Well, to me, that's not a living wage. I hear, you know, Amazon's going to hire for $18 an hour. Is that really a great job? I mean, is that, you know, that's kind of a starter job, but how does someone buy a home on that? So, you know, we don't have a long-term comprehensive plan, and we've got a lot of big business right now, but is big business really a great partner to us? The ones we brought in, we've got more truck traffic, we've got air pollution, we've got congestion on our streets, we get on our own highways and we're in a wagon train of trucks. Define big business. What's it really going to do? You know, I think we need more intellectual business. I think we've talked about having incubators in our community. I think we need to get some entrepreneurship programs for the young men and women that want to start businesses. I know that I give Caesar a shout out. He did something with a building downtown. He's got individual business people in there that are utilizing that facility. They work together. It's the nucleus of what we need to do. So I would like to see some of these big businesses that have come to town bring their executives to our town. They brought their trucks and they brought their jobs that our part-time jobs, I guess we'll call them, but let's define big business and make sure they're going to fit the needs of the community.
Thank you.
Well, I'll start with the second part. As far as big business being brought to Joliet, in the last 8 years since I've been mayor, there have been 4 corporate headquarters that have relocated in Joliet. Cadence Logistics relocated from Alsip, Illinois to Joliet, their corporate headquarters. M2M in Motion, located from Schaumburg, Illinois, they moved their corporate headquarters to Joliet. Illinois Marine Towing, relocated from Lamont, Illinois to Joliet, and then this year GP Transco opened their corporate headquarters in Joliet. So that's a great story that has not been told enough, but it certainly was a goal of myself and the council to diversify the jobs and bring them to Joliet, and we are doing that. And I would challenge anyone to find an 8-year period in the history of this city where 4 corporate headquarters moved their location and established themselves in the city of Joliet. It's a great local story what's happened here. Regarding big business, I agree with Mr. Darcy. There's a lot of big business. I said this, I touched on this the other day with my speech. I'll elaborate a little bit today. When I ran for mayor 8 years ago against Mayor Girani, there were probably 15 debates or forums similar to this. And at every single forum, not every forum, but not at a single forum did the issue of truck traffic ever come up. The issue back then was complaints about the level of jobs and how the temp helps, about people being cut before they're eligible for unemployment or insurance. That was the real complaint. And when Amazon came in, Amazon was a game changer for the area. Amazon, at the time, was paying people $15 an hour, which was higher than any of the temp help jobs. Amazon was offering matching 401k contributions. Amazon was offering insurance, and they were offering college contributions. So Amazon did force the other warehousing, logistics, other things, not just in Joliet in the area, to up their game. If they wanted to attract employees, they had to come close to matching what Amazon was doing, and we've seen that. There was a Harbor Freight opened this last summer, inside Center Point. Starting wage, this is starting wage at Harbor Freight is $22.50 an hour. So we've come a long way from where we were 8 years ago when people were making $8.50 and were being laid off after 2 months of employment with no benefits. Regarding the track, Mr. Darcy is correct. I've met with officials from NASCAR. They are racing this year, and they think next year in downtown Chicago, and this is to up their profile for the television deal which they are negotiating. My understanding, they recently raced in Los Angeles in the LA Coliseum. They lost tens of millions of dollars on that race. They're making to reconfigure that museum or the Coliseum into a track, but their business model, they're making that upping the profile will mean more money on the back end through the TV contract. I'm certain they're going to lose money in the city of Chicago this year. I can't imagine what the overhead is going to be to put a track on Michigan Avenue and Lakeshore Drive, but they have every intention of coming back to Joliet. That's why they have not abandoned their property. That's why they still are paying people to keep the property up. Their goal is to reconfigure the track, make it similar to other tracks like Bristol or Daytona, but they have every intention of coming back. The NHRA track, which also was never abandoned, there is an NHRA event scheduled for Joliet this summer. It's going to be great to welcome them back. There also is a motocross event scheduled for the larger track this year. So the track, which has been vacant for several years, is coming back. I would point out one other point. When we met with NASCAR officials, they intend and want to build warehousing on their excess property. And the city of Joliet has told them no. It's one of many projects in this southern region the last 2 years that the city of Joliet has shut down. So I'm sure those intentions are still there. I'm sure with a different mayor or a different council they're going to pursue it. But as we stand right now, with all the excess property they have, they wanted and had plans to redevelop that and rezone that, and it was the city of Joliet that said no. But to answer the first question, there will be racing coming back. That's what we've been told. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bell.
The main comment I have to add is, again, frontline voices get left out when we start making decisions about what happens in these large development areas that are vacant for so long. The funding, the corporate responsibility, no one's asking. I think we heard like 4 companies that are here. When you look at the other industrial areas in the city, people are moving here for a reason, and the intent that they have is probably progress, right? But is it for the citizens in the city? So I'm all for progress, but I am not comfortable with progress that involves people that come here seeking out monetary gain, that does not help and does not assist the people in the city. And often, too many times, we hear we're bringing jobs. I mean, every newspaper article, every person that stands up in front of the city, they may not again be here, but everybody stands up and says we're bringing jobs to this city. And I don't know about you, but jobs, there's a process to applying for jobs. There's an application process. A lot of people are not looking at these companies to see what is their application process like. Does it speak to the people that are in the community? Is there a bilingual person on staff? Who are these managers? Are they from the city? Someone brought up Lion Electric, electric school buses. Do we understand the impact of freight and warehousing and the responsibility when it comes to what's already happening with our climate, right? So they're moving all these things here, and people will eventually move out, lose homes, or their health will be at risk because of all of the pollution. So we have some serious issues and things to consider, again, when we have people that stand before us and say, we're bringing these things, we're bringing, and people want to be here, but what about your citizens? They don't want to sit in traffic. Imagine coming out of COVID for 2-3 years, and now you can't get from one side of town to the other. Your hospital is gone. Your grocery store is gone. So again, I think we need to talk real solutions to the people that are in the front, that are standing in the front line. A lot of the activists and organizers that are trying to break down the barriers, remove the barriers to get real access to the paperwork and information about how are they gaining access to our city, and why are they so comfortable being here for business but they don't live here in our city, so they don't have to experience the things that we do day to day.
Thank you. This one, on the southwest side, southeast side, they've been inundated with trucking terminals and warehouses. Now they're talking about blasting on Richard Street near schools and residential areas. What is your plan to address this? I'll start with you.
I know that there has been a lot of talk about this, and I know that there hasn't been enough information passed around to understand what this could or couldn't do. But that quarry's been there for 100 years, and I don't think they've ever blasted, so I'm not sure if starting to blast now is the right idea, but I honestly am not astute enough to give you an answer on what it would do to the community. But I know the community has spoken out, and I think they asked 4 or 5 questions. They said, could you tell us this, this, and this? And I don't think they ever got the answer. I think that's the frustration with that whole project, was the process broke down. So I don't think everybody's secure that it could be good or bad. I think that's part of the problem from what I've understood when I've talked to folks about that. So the process broke down, there were questions asked, there weren't questions answered, and I think that's all part and parcel of how we need to run the city. We need to make sure that there's clear communication and everybody is clearly understanding what a project like that would do, good or bad.
Thank you.
Regarding the, I'll start with the second half. The blasting, it's not that the process broke down. The people who wanted to do this pulled it from the agenda. It was set for a public hearing, which is, again, I talked earlier about things being vetted in public, not backroom deals. When it came time for the public hearing, where they would present the information to the public, to the council, to me, where the public would be allowed to ask questions, and the council would be allowed to ask questions, the project was pulled and did not move forward. So there is no pending project about blasting in quarries. Like Terry, I agree. I don't know much about the subject. I know there are other quarries in Joliet that do blasting. I don't know how close residences are to those quarries. I do know that it's all monitored by the federal government, but of course, ultimately, if the project's brought back forward, there'll be a choice for the city council whether to approve it or not. But there is no pending project. Regarding the truck traffic, obviously this is going to come up, and I love having these forums, have a chance to explain what's happening in the southern region of Joliet and in Elwood, because it became really apparent to me, especially during the North Point process, how uninformed people were, not just in Joliet, but in Elwood and Manhattan, about what Centerpoint is and about what Centerpoint was brought here to do. Centerpoint came to Elwood in 2002. I was not the mayor or city councilman. I was still a police officer. Centerpoint came to Joliet in 2007. There are 2 railroad yards, intermodals, open inside Centerpoint. Those 2 intermodals constitute the largest inland port on the entire North American continent. Understand the scope of what is happening inside Centerpoint. And very few people do. If you've had a reason to go out there, you could see it for yourself. But I think many people in the area just do not understand what that means. Last year, the Union Pacific Yard inside Joliet had 650,000 containers delivered by train. They were offloaded inside that yard. Trucks came in to pick the container up, to pull it out, to take it to a warehouse or logistics center somewhere in the area. Another truck eventually brought the empty container back to Centerpoint. It was loaded back on a train, sent back to Long Beach, California. This happened 650,000 times last year, just inside the Joliet Intermodal. Burlington Northern inside Elwood has the same process and the same number of containers. I was at the Union Pacific Yard in December. They are, in the process, they are doubling their operation. They have twice as many cranes. The Burlington Northern facility in Elwood has the same, twice as many cranes. So this year, they're anticipating 1.2 million containers delivered into Joliet, offloaded and taken in and out by trucks. So that's the issue with the truck traffic in Joliet. It's not warehouses, it's not logistics centers. Those are byproducts of what's happening inside Centerpoint. So the bigger question is, what do we do locally? We don't control the railroads. We have no influence over what they do. And that is, again, one of the biggest hubs in the country and continues to grow. Well, what I've done as mayor, working with the council, are a few things. Number one, I've put forward the Holboat Road Bridge project, and that's going to open in the next couple months. I talked about all the skepticism that went with that project. The idea of the Holboat Road Bridge, which is not a dollar cost to Joliet taxpayers, it's private funding and money from the state of Illinois, is to draw the truck traffic off of the east side to the far west side of Joliet, where trucks could get off on Holboat Road and I-80 and have a direct route in and out of Centerpoint, directly to the train yards inside Centerpoint. That should mean significant reduction in traffic on local roads in your neighborhood. I think it's a great step forward. When I was in Washington, D.C., meeting with our elected officials, our congressmen, they were extremely complimentary of Joliet for the foresight and the vision, and specifically said, moving forward, this is how public works projects are going to be done at that scope. So it will be a great step forward for Joliet. I talked about the businesses that have been shut down, or the potential businesses. It's 3 or 4 just off the top of my head I could think of that the Joliet City Council has said, no, we're not moving forward on. Another thing that I did as mayor is establish for the first time truck enforcement from our police officers. There are officers whose only job is to do traffic enforcement on trucks. And every day they're in or around Centerpoint, targeting trucks that are on local roads, that are roads that are not built for that weight, and making sure that the truck drivers follow the rules. Will County has the same program. The Will County Sheriffs with Mike Kelly are doing the same thing. That was never done in Joliet before. We're doing that in Joliet today. So that's not the final answer. And again, it's daunting, the number of trucks that we know are coming as the rail yards continue to expand. But I think the Holboat Road Bridge is a big step forward. I think the North Point development, requiring a closed loop, any truck that will get in or out of North Point is not going to be on your road. The only way in and out is going to be through Centerpoint. And I think that's important for a couple reasons. Number one, it will reduce traffic on your roads. But number two, that's the first plan that any municipality has put forward to try to handle what's happening inside those rail yards. Between that and the Holboat Road Bridge, there's nothing else to speak of. Other communities all around us are buying in. They're building warehouses in Minooka, in Wilmington. Elwood is almost surrounded by warehouses. They're building them in Shanahan. They're building them in Shorewood, in Romeoville, in Crest Hill, in Lockport, in Homer Glen, in New Lenox, et cetera, et cetera. So there is no plan. We in Joliet are trying to implement a plan. I think we've done so on the council. I certainly think the Hobolt Road Bridge is going to see a significant reduction in the trucks on your roads in our area. And I'm very proud to have been part of putting that forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, did you need a question?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay. Where was it? Oh, the east side of Joliet has been inundated with truck traffic, warehouses, and now... Wait a minute, was that the one I just had? Yeah, okay. Lost track there. And warehouses, now they're talking about blasting at the quarry down on
Okay.
Richard Street. So how do you plan to address that?
Well, we had a small group, or very large group of people that had an interest in the quarry blasting. And as Mr. Darcy said, when you don't know about what's happening, you have to be at those city council meetings. So I am a person who attends those city council meetings, east side neighborhood meetings, and what ends up happening is that you end up seeing, again, the frontline people, the people who care, and the people who are listening, and the people who are paying attention to the people in the community. And so there were a group of people who were receiving letters about what was going to happen in their neighborhood. And so when you think about something being blasted, the first thing is, you know, to be afraid. And so again, when people don't know what could affect their children, the schools nearby, if we didn't have those men and women stand up and start questioning city council, I wouldn't have ended up there. I might have, again, just been there for my own personal concerns, which I always do go to the city council meetings, right? Because I want to know what's happening. I want to be an informed citizen. And what we ended up hearing was that it may be a quarry. We're not sure how much water. I mean, it was just so much that came out of it. So I think, again, with anything like this, we have to ask ourselves, you know, how do you feel about those things that you, and do you feel like they're being kept from you? And when you do come to a realization that there has to be some public interest, there has to be some concern for the citizens, what will you do about it? And I think in this case, again, we all got together. I think now there's a group, it has some acronyms to it, and there's a group that's actually actively still staying on task and on target and following up with the city, and I think that's a good thing. So I think I would continue to work with them, speak with them, find out where that development is going. A lot of times they bring in lawyers, and lawyers mix things up, and they change the words of what people really feel, and so again, it can get lost in the sauce. You don't know when the next meeting is going. So I think for me, I would stay informed about it and make sure that people are aware that it's happening. And anyone on the city council that's currently working on that project, I think they're doing a good job to kind of make sure that they keep those citizens informed.
Thank you. After this next question, we're going to give each of the candidates a chance to make a wrap-up statement about their candidacy, what they expect to do for Joliet. So,
I don't think I answered the truck question.
oh, okay, I'm sorry. Do that now, please. Thank you for
Thank you.
bringing that to my attention.
I don't know if I fell asleep, but I woke up when I heard you go to the next one.
Oh, I went this way. I thought I started with you. Go ahead, please.
It's a lot going on.
You know, ironically, we can blame Abraham Lincoln for all of our railroads. You know, he was an attorney for the rails back in the 1850s, and here we are. You know, I understand that bridge is a good thing, and I know that it's going to contain in those streets the truck traffic. One of the concerns I have is when I'm standing downtown on Ottawa Street and I'm trying to have a conversation with someone, those trucks that are going back have to come through our town. So I understand it's going to contain it on that side of 80 and then get them onto 80, but that's the funnel. So then everything has to come into the funnel this way, and then they funnel out that way. So I just think that we have so much issue with truck traffic, and I think that we need to collaborate with our state, county, federal people to help us figure out a new way to bring those trucks from wherever they are to where they're going, because then we know they're going to come back out. And I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit, and maybe I'm going to get in trouble for this. Years ago, there was a conversation about something called the Ileana Tollway. The Ileana Tollway was going to go from I-55 south of the Kankakee River to I-57 and so on. And in the middle of all that, is a piece of property that the state bought in Peatone, and there's an airport there. And in our world, you know, and I sat on the tollway board, and we looked out 10, 20, 30 years. We need to look out that far, because the trees we plant today are going to be mature 20 years from now. So at some point, if we can take something like the Ileana, and if the tollway would get involved in that, because that would be one way it would work, we can move all that stuff south of our Route 80s. And instead of the funnel all coming through here all the time, Northwest Indiana is a huge market, so a lot of that stuff's going to go back and forth that way. A lot of that stuff goes back up to the airports to fly out commercially that way. So if you had an airport that, you know, you got planes, trains, and automobiles, so now you've got everything semi-contained right there. They would get moved from the rail yard to a commercial airport in Peatone, or they would go out to the Ileana and stay off Route 80 and stay out of our neighborhoods, stay out of our towns, and give us more opportunity to use our roads. I mean, when someone's driving to work, our load to get to Chicago now has been added 30, 40 minutes every time we're going one way. Those are valuable minutes to us. We only get 1,440 every day. So we really need to look out strategically, long term. What are we going to do to make sure that we don't keep burning our minutes so those trucks can find their way back to the funnel? And I really think that we have to start looking at a long-term plan like that. Thank you.
Thank you. So you all know we have legal marijuana in Illinois. Some of you might be appreciating that more than others. I don't know. But the use of marijuana brings in sales tax revenues to the city, to the county, and to the state of Illinois. So the question here is, how would you use the tax revenue from the sale of cannabis to support programs in Joliet? Mr. Mayor.
This has been an issue, and it's real. To be frank, it's still murky. The state of Illinois has not given a full disclosure of what the actual sales tax was. It's a new law, and it's a new program. There's a lot of issues with it. For the longest time, because it's federally illegal to possess or buy marijuana, though the company in Joliet could not deposit any of their money in a federally insured bank. That's been changed recently, so it's an ongoing issue. I know that there are groups that have been in front of the city council and have had proposals. We just still aren't in a position to know exactly what the dollars are going to be or where that would go. Part of the law, just to be clear, that was passed was that some of the sales tax revenue has to be redirected. I think the language is to communities that were hardest hit by the war on drugs. That's part of the statute. So the city will comply with that, but as we stand right now, because it's still a new law and an evolving issue, that just hasn't happened moving forward. But again, I know there's been proposals, there's been different groups, local groups that have come to the city, just haven't been decisions made on that so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bell?
All right, so I know there was an individual who was speaking out about the marijuana funding, I believe a year or so ago, and so where we are now with this is that I'm working with the group Equity and Transformation, and just last summer we did a training here in Joliet at the hotel, and we went out into the community and we went to grocery stores, we went to neighborhoods, we knocked on doors, and we had a conversation about the war on drugs, and some of the people were excited that we were actually having a conversation about this. They were not as in-depth as many of us in the room about who started it, Reagan and all those folks, and was it real and was it not real, was it an illusion, and what really happened to the people here. But I recently lost 2 family members to drug overdose. So I want to be clear that I don't believe that drugs are from the 80s, 90s. I believe that the opioid overdoses and the things that we're seeing in our school system with kids using edibles and overdosing, and there has to be some regulation. So when we start talking about marijuana sales, and that we have, I believe, 2 in our city, one of the things I want to see is that we take that and we come from a restorative mindset. And so what that means is that we reset our mind the same way we have to do now with 3 candidates, right? We have to think about what's happening in this era in the nation. And we have to think about how we see ourselves if we don't start having real solutions for the issues that we're facing. So while government is busy talking about the money and the dollars, we're still losing lives. We're still having a serious impact on the future. And again, if you're a child of that era and your city is falling down and crumbling around you, how do we infuse hope? So just talking about money sometimes is not enough. It feels comfortable. Again, I know a lot of people in the room, so I feel comfortable talking about it. But we have to focus on healing families. The survivors are usually those people who don't want to speak up. They don't want to advocate because they are currently still dealing with some of the ramifications of being from a family of the war on drugs, the effects, right? So we still see them in front of us. I think I will say that one of the things that Chicago did, and again, I'm part of this organization, I'm in a leadership role actually, is they started a Chicago Future Fund, which was again to look at those people who have also been in that same continuum, which we can pull ourselves out of. It's time for transformation. Let's be very clear. Joliet can do it. We may need some help from national. We may need some people to come into our town and have some serious conversations with folks who already do this work. But one thing about issue advocacy is that people want to help. They want to volunteer. They want to change what they see. And so with the Chicago Future Fund, that was $500 that was given to individuals who were a product of the prison system. So again, something that hasn't come up, but that's where we're rooted in the war on drugs. And so again, to glorify the sales of marijuana when it's still federally not okay, and then people don't understand those laws, and then they're still coming out of prison into our city. They live here. There's a bigger, again, picture that we have to look at. So I definitely want to focus on using the funding to allocate it to the people who need it, to the families. So again, that word has not been said, but it's called reparations, reconciliation. Again, resetting your mindset to a new way of doing things and redeveloping things. And I know that's different, but that's why I'm here before you, to show you that there's a difference and there's a change that can come about soon.
Thank you.
I agree with Ticey. There's nothing more important than the war on drugs. You know, I have a brother that's been in and out of opiates 3 times. He was in a terrible accident, and he's paralyzed from the chest down. And he's in a lot of pain. But the opiates help him get through it. Now they put some electronic device in him that keeps that pain from getting to his mind. So it's really hard, because it's so hard when somebody gets to that point, they don't know how to get out of that. With regard to the marijuana, you know, it's a shame that we have to tax all of our weaknesses. We tax gambling, we tax alcohol, and now we've introduced marijuana as a taxable item. But there should be some good use. And I'm not saying that I advocate marijuana, but it's been around a long, long time. And the money that is driven from that, the tax dollars, should go back to the neighborhoods that need the help to bring people off that. I know Bolingbrook added another dispensary license, and the neat thing about what they did, it was a 51% minority owned, and all the money goes into the neighborhoods that need it. I was just talking to Angel from the township. He put in a grant, and he was accepted with this grant for several $100,000 to bring in 18 social workers to our community to work with our children to catch them before there's a problem. When I talked to you about the mental health problem that's inundated the emergency rooms of our hospitals, 75% of those 30% are under 20 years old. It's terrible. We need to give our children a better chance than that, and we need to have an absolute war on drugs. We need to be the lighthouse, the beacon. It stops here, it stops in this community. We need to go after that with a vengeance. Just like they're coming after our kids with a vengeance, it's our turn. We need to bring it on, we need to push it back, and we need to get them out of our community. And this marijuana tax funding money could be all a part of doing that. We could have a special task force. We need to go after that. It needs to stop now. Thank you.
Thank you. And we know that we did not cover every question that got sent to us. Some were parts of other questions that had already been answered in one way or another. Some will have to be taken offline because we are just about out of time, and we do want to make time for people to make their closing statements. We thank you all for being here and for being willing to participate and to hear from our candidates. We will start with the closing statements in alphabetical order. We'll start with Ms. Ticey Bell.
Oh, we've said so much. Thank you all so much for your questions. I think for my closing remarks, I want to refer to the information that I shared in the lobby. And again, one thing you may hear from me is a resounding voice of what I stand for, and that's for the people, right? It is a transition that I've accepted. My role from being in non-for-profit for years, understanding what it's like to work without a union, understanding what it's like to work for low wages, and then be here in a space where that's all government is about, right? But there's big pieces to government, which is policy, and so we know what some of those are. Again, some of the folks in our town may not know this, but I work with the Reimagine Public Safety Act folks on the as a liaison, for that organization. So I knew when they said, how do you reimagine public safety, it had to start with mental health. So I'm glad that a lot of the questions and a lot of the things that I was able to share today with you all, again, rotated on this formation cycle, that we have to be able to look at engagement from families, engagement from our communities, engagement from the sectors. The public interest groups is great, but we also have to look at the growth dynamics and how can we grow and where do we see ourselves. So again, we can have the bipartisan act and laws and all of the policies, but when we're looking here on a local level, we want that support. We do have a great benefit of having folks like Ms. Denise Winfrey as a part of NACO, and we have some great leadership in our city. And so I think that a lot of times we just have to get in the room and come together on these things and make choices that benefit everybody. Don't let this be the last time that we get together and we have real conversations. Let's take some of these questions, these answers. Maybe we didn't like a lot of them. They weren't ours, but I challenge you to take what you did like and ask yourself a few questions. How did that make you feel? Those are always my key things. And what can you do about it moving forward? And so again, we have voters in our city that have to make decisions. There's 5 districts, let me remind everyone, that have open seats right now. So we have to get to know those individuals who may have different views that you've heard up here, and they may stand for or they may stand against, but there's somewhere in the middle that we have to connect them to those voters that are very important to the next steps. So reminding everyone the things that I stand to not rectify, but provide solutions to our health care, prioritizing our citizens that are most vulnerable, our disabled, our veterans, our children, and our families that are in a crisis prevention mode right now with health. Safety, advocating for gun safety, advocating and believing that we can build a relationship with the current police and the fire department, and we can look at training and all of the options that come with that. Workforce development, again, I don't want to just say that warehouses and all those things are bad things, but I do want to take a look at where we're going with workforce. I've been fortunate enough to build some healthy relationships with workforce recently, and I know that their plan is to definitely look at different pathways. So we have to double down on what we see our youth doing, and if you've been like me where you haven't had that wage increase, or maybe you're a woman in that gap, let's stand in the gap. Let's change what we see in our city locally. And lastly, neighborhood improvements. As I mentioned, I work with the group that is looking at the prison, and I had a prison project there recently, and then I also looked at the Cassidy House, right? So I have a lovely neighborhood improvement plan that I'd like to share with you all. I have an upcoming town hall in March. I'll release the date sooner than later. And lastly, if you want any more information about my campaign and why I'm an advocate for people and change, you can check my website at www.citizensforticeybell.com, and I'd love to speak with any of you one-on-one. Thank you.
I want to, I'm sorry, my turn or not? Check mark.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Thank you, Ms. Bell. We'll now hear from Terry Darcy.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Speaker.
I'm not used to this. I do want to thank everyone for coming out today. There's a few comments that were made during the day here that I want to clear up. When the mayor asked me why I didn't raise my hand for a term he called CARB, I'd never heard it. The previous mayor, Mayor Girani, put together a group of influential people and business people and people of the community that he wanted to hear from, and he and the city manager met with those people on a handful of occasions. It wasn't a clandestine, we're all trying to do something behind the scenes, private meeting. I can clear you up on that right now. I'm not that person. And Louise Ray would never let me be that person, or she'd have beat the hell out of me. So some time ago, the mayor put together a group of people. And it was on the city's website up until about 3 or 4 months ago, and now it's off. My name was on there, and other influential people in the community. There were, in the group, there was university presidents, Joliet Junior College president. This wasn't some kind of clandestine group, and I just want to take offense that don't put words out there that don't count. That group that he put together is now completely off the city website. 6 months ago, it was still on there. Never convened once. I take pride in helping this city. I have been part of this city for a long time. I've given it my heart, my soul, my time, my treasures, and I'm glad to do that. There's been many, many years where I've just continued to help. When times were down, I didn't slack off. The city means a lot to me. So I wanted to clear that up. And when it comes to things like the prison, I flew a group of people out to Mansfield, Ohio. That's where they did the movie Shawshank Redemption. Greg Pierbolt and the group from the chamber. We all went out there to find out what can we do with this prison property. They were bringing in $2.5 or $3 million in revenue. They didn't paint the cells. It was paint peeling everywhere. The warden's office was redone. They had some things in there. And I know the prison is a sore subject. None of us like to ride on the back of that, but it is what it is. It's part of the history of our community. With that trip, we were able to get that project going and decide, you know, this is something that can bring revenue. It's part of our history. Matter of fact, I don't know if you know this, but on the Blues Brothers, the back of their stage always said, "It's never too late to mend." You know where that's at? That's on the floor of the solitary confinement of the original Joliet prison. Still there. It's never too late to mend. And I believe that. So I just wanted to clear that up. There was nothing clandestine. This group did nothing but try and help the city. As far as the Joliet Country Club, I'd love to get involved with Michael and his team to get that project off the ground and done. You know, we're talking about it, and it's been festering. And I've had people call me on both sides. Let's get everybody together. Let's get this thing done. I don't know if Mr. Caparelli's too busy, but you know, that's a real important project for the city. That's a $500 million project. It's going to provide a lot of places for people to live, and there's a component in there for a grocery store. And when you get that many rooftops, you're going to start getting that. So, again, we got to make sure that we do the right thing with the canvas we have left. You know, I have a few philosophies. I got a bunch of them. I've got them all from everybody else. But we can't wait for the future. We have to create it. We always have to look out for the long ball. What we do today is going to affect us 20 years from now. Let's make sure we do the right thing today so that that tree grows properly, or that neighborhood or the people grow properly for what we want to do. I know I have the necessary skills, professionalism, and knowledge to be your mayor. I've been on national dealer councils twice with General Motors, meeting with leadership there, Mary Barron, whoever. I've been on tollway boards, did billion-dollar projects. I know I can do this, and I want to serve the public. That's really the reason I'm doing this. I love Joliet, and I'd love to be your mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Darcy. Mr. Odekirk.
Thank you. Once again, thank you, Denise, and the National Hookup for this forum. I love the feedback. I love the dialogue. I always have. I think it's great to exchange ideas, maybe to clear some things up, and then hear other things that people have to say. I can say as a mayor, I've been to community meetings almost every night of the week for the last 8 years. I did so 4 years before as a District 2 councilman. So I certainly enjoy hearing from our citizens, hearing what they want, what their concerns are, and relaying it back to my actions as mayor and as a council. Before I go any further, I also want to compliment, I know there's other elected officials here or people seeking office, and Ms. Bell and Mr. Darcy. I can tell you it's not an easy thing. When you run for public office, you put yourself out for public ridicule and public scrutiny. So I do compliment everyone who does that because they want to make their community better. And I believe the intentions are good for everyone on this panel. I simply would say, I'm very proud of the changes that I brought to Joliet. The old way of doing business no longer occurs. You can dance around in any way you want. This is not government for the privileged few, for the wealthy businessmen in town. We have completely opened up and made transparent what we're doing at City Hall. I'm proud with the changes I've made on the Police and Fire Board. We're going to have a chance to talk about that. Actually, Dave Jackson, the president of the Black Police Officers Association, is here, who is endorsing me. In the past, and these are great jobs. Everyone knows the city jobs are great jobs to have. Everyone in this room knows it was not an open door for everyone in our community to get those jobs. I wasn't from Joliet. No one was looking out for me, but I was a police officer. I saw it. I know the fire department tests were given out to family members. I know promotional exams were given out to police members if you were the right person and you had the right family connections. That has changed with me as mayor. For the first time in the history of the city, the Police and Fire Board, which is in charge of all the hiring, the promotions, and some of the discipline, is a 5-member board. It's been composed since I've been mayor of at least 3 minorities on that board. That was never the makeup before. They were all handpicked by the mayor. They were all inside people. Again, that changed when I became mayor. I believe in being fair and being equitable to everybody, whether it's a friend of mine in the police department or someone else. So I'm very proud of my record, very proud of what we've been able to do. I'll just end it at this. One thing that I know from talking with people in Joliet, they're all over, east side, west side, north, south, people in our community demand the city services that we provide. They demand that if they dial 911, a fireman or a police officer or paramedic is going to arrive on time with the right equipment and with the right ability to handle the situation. They demand that their streets are taken care of, that sidewalks are taken care of. If it snows, that the streets are plowed. They demand from our water department that they get clean water. If there's a water main break, that it doesn't run for 3 days, it doesn't run overnight, where there's low pressure or no pressure for the residents. That's what we provide in Joliet. We've done a great job. I talked earlier about the deficit that I inherited when I joined the city council and where we are today financially. The city is healthy and in great shape. So I'll just simply say this. I've considered it a privilege. I've been the mayor for 8 years. I've worked every day. I think many of you have seen me over and over again. But being your mayor has been a privilege for the last 8 years. Certainly leading this city through the pandemic and the COVID crisis is something memorable. It's something that will be noteworthy and people will be talking about 50 or 100 years from now. Leading the city forward in so many different facets, like the water project, addressing something that had been ignored by city government for 50 or 60 years. We know our water supply is running low. Nothing was done prior to me becoming mayor, and now we are moving forward. So, again, thank you for your attendance. Thank you for the dialogue. Denise, thank you for the moderation. And thank all of you for your support and certainly, hopefully, your support moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Odekirk. Just a few wrap-up things. Just a reminder to all of you that the 3 groups here today, National Cup of Black Women, NAACP, and ABBA, are not endorsing any candidates. We don't do that. That's not our charter. What we are doing is providing a forum so that you can hear from them. Individual members make their own choices about who they're going to vote for, just like you would. So we want to make sure that you remember that. We also want to remind you that whoever you vote for, you need to vote. We have a number of people in the audience, I know, who are deputy registrars, that asked them to raise their hands. So if you know people who are not registered, need somebody to come, make sure they get registered, help you get people lined up. Please see some of the people who have their hands up. What we need is for people to show up. If you're not going to show up and participate in the process, you really don't have anything to say about what's going on. So we need that to happen. Also want to remind you that we have literature from candidates, not only from our mayoral candidates, but for people running for other offices in the city. We have a table over here to the side, so you can pick up their literature. You can talk to them over there if they're going to stay around for a bit after. We encourage you to do that. We also have quite a few snacks and things out there. We need you to take that home. Please. So, thank you all for being here. We appreciate you coming out this morning. Thank you for joining us.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh my God.